Hi, this is George Lees telling one of the borders of Scotland and England's biggest secrets, that this is a part of the border between England and Scotland that was carved up by Edward the Longshanks. Yeah, that is Longshanks in the movie. Yeah, that is the family that had the gay boy as his first son, and that gay boy is the person that was to become the lover as a gay boy of the Margaret of Maid of Norway. Yeah, it's a massive, typically English trick to mean that everywhere that everything that is political and the ownership of the land all over Great Britain is dictated by England, and that is the religions become the Church of England, the Church of Scotland, and that becomes the massive bloodbath that we now realise that it is. So the Marjorie Bank name is the man who stood on top of the tower in Coldstream High Street, and that is the owner of the massive estate with the temples in it, as if they were the gods and the religions that were being shared between Scotland and England. Shared means bloodbath. Yeah, that is the massive religious strife, the Irish potato famines, the inability to go to church unless you choose the Church of England, and all of it is the massive Cavalier versus Covenanter wars, and a massive cause of death in British history. So Longshanks achieved that by taking his pick to marry his son. Yeah, that is the gay boy that his friend, actually in the movie that is the Braveheart movie, his friend gets, who, when he declares that he's familiar with the acts of war, Longshanks puts his hand round his shoulders, guides him to the window, and then picks him up and chucks him out from the upper levels. Yeah, so that is the lover of the person who was to become the husband of Margaret of Norway. Yeah, and there's nothing to declare any international affairs or even what the Treaty of Birgham is. It's a massive carve up. Even to this day, we have a parliament in London and a parliament in Scotland. Yeah, there should be no need for the independence, but the Treaty of Birgham declares that Scotland will never ever have an independent king anymore. Yeah, that is Longshanks's deep capacity to scam his enemies and even his children's lovers, and to chuck them out the geopolitical window. Yeah, several stories up, none of them survive that, and the religious hatred is just the same. The only ones that survive it are the ones that we commemorate by building a massive tower that no one has ever heard the person that is the naming of that tower, even in the tiny town right on the border where that tower was built. Okay, that is Marjorie Banks Edgerton, to commemorate the signing of the Treaty of Birgham in this tiny little village. Yeah, and the pub's just reopened, and this is the place where the people got on that actually physically attacked me on the bus for being a paedophile when I was talking to my friend Hamilton's daughter, who is preparing to go to university. She's not been able to do that because they're all being scammed by Boris at this time. Yeah, that is Longshanks' claim to the Scottish borders. It's still very much in Birgham, but sadly none of the people, or they pretended that none of them had ever heard of the treaty. And the plaque, I'm sure, that used to be here was much more explicit than this one. There's not a mention of who he was going to be married off to. The sudden death of that Margaret of Norway, yeah, and that is the massive plan that means that Scotland and England have to have separate procedures. Everything that is law enforcement, it has to be in different set of rules, yeah, and all of it is a mafia operation ever since, which is why all of my politicians in this region have gotten away with refusing to meet me in minuted political meetings ever since 2009. As I say this today, we're in 2020. Yeah, it is a massive piss take, and that is the only remnants of those events. There is no archive of where the marriage was being planned with. That is the Maid of Norway, where I went with the woman from Chipping Norton, yeah, on my honeymoon. Yeah, I think we should stop there in case we get into the roles of the Chipping Norton set in the context of freedom that allow people to stand on the top of a column where they are anonymous, and it covers the majestic scams of Edward de Longshanks. Yeah, I forget the name of the actor in the movie. And that is the two little poofy boys that are with him. They take the box lid off, and inside the box is the Duke of York, played by the Bertie Wooster actor, and all of it you'll be familiar with, but none of it mentions the deal with Norway that led to the death of the child that was chosen to be the next queen. Yeah, not long after. All of it is the same ruthless methodology. He's prepared to chuck the gay boy out the window. God knows what Maud, the woman that is the Margaret of Norway, was actually born in Roxburgh Castle, within 1 mile of the hospital that I was born in. Yeah, that is another one of those deaths that occurred. So Alexander III was born in Roxburgh Castle in Kelso, and that is the ancient one, not the one that is inhabited by the Duke of Roxburgh and his widows now. Yeah, that is the dowagers that are Win Williams and Lady Jane Grosvenor. And all of it is in turmoil because all of them want as much as they can possibly get, like Longshanks. It's his legacy, and all the land between Coldstream and Inverness is still owned by the Earl of Home, who was in the judiciary for this massive decision. Yeah. Was signed at Birgham, which I'm now in. Yeah, 5 miles from Kelso, 3.5 miles from Coldstream. You'll have to get a little bit closer up, but it's amazing how technology can help. So I've posted that on Facebook this morning after having my dinner, right on the Scottish-English border, in the town of Birgham, on Earl of Home's territory. Remember that he's the one that carpet bombed the Garden of Eden for its oil wealth. and all of the scams that I've reported since I went up to the top of those Cheviot hills that you can just see the top of in that picture. Yeah, and that is the Earls of Home that still run the crooked banks. They were the first bank owners, and now all of it is just a Muppet show. Yeah, none of them have the dignity or the grace to actually tell the truth about what actually happened hundreds or thousands of years ago, that mean that they have to perpetrate the lie and continue to work with the head of the Metropolitan Police in London, that is Lord Condon, and that is the scamming of the London Olympics with Princess Anne and the usual suspects that are David Beckham and Seb Coe. Yeah, all of them on the take from the ordinary people and the children of those ordinary people that now have to pay for their university access. 70 to 80,000 pounds per student, yeah, for the four years honours degree that I got for nothing. Braveheart would not be aware of universities, I don't think, and Longshanks was ruthless. The others that are named in the plot are John de Baliol, who was given the throne of England and told that it will never ever, this throne of Scotland, and was told that he was to shield it and to make it unavailable to anybody that was of Scottish descent ever again. That is John de Baliol of Oxford. No bombing in every war since. Yeah, and the other name that is in the stories in Wikipedia are Bruce, which is why my mate Bruce was deathly quiet last night in the hotel that I lived in. Usually he just gives me Winston Churchill's V sign, because that is his political commentary on the world that they have created. Right then, so let's now just get along the road to the pub where I've had dinner today, and then we'll switch the camera off to let you see how tiny Birgham actually is. So 5 miles to Coldstream, Kelso, 3¼ to Coldstream, and that's not yet the English border, because you have to walk onto Coldstream Bridge to get there. And there's the wars that have been fought between Scotland and England, when everything could have been already carved up using those treaties, but no, they have to create more war graves. Birgham Millennium and War Memorial Cairn. Birgham Millennium War Memorial Cairn, one for 45 and one for 1919. Oh, and here's the Birgham story. Oh, sorry, I have done this before. Alexander II, King of Scotland. Let's just reel it off. Alexander III, King of Scotland. Alexander III's direct heirs had all died within a few years between 1281 and 1284. Alexander summoned 13 Scottish earls and 24 barons to Scone Palace on 5th February 1284 to sign an agreement whereby on his death, without any other legitimate heir, his granddaughter Margaret would become Queen of Scotland on 1st November 1985. He married his second wife, Yolande de Dreux, in the expectation of having further children. However, on 18th March 1286, tragedy struck when Alexander, aged 44, returning from a meeting in Edinburgh in a stormy weather, fell from his horse at Kinghorn, broke his neck and died. Now that is in the collection of videos that I made. I went to Kinghorn. Remember, on the cliff top there was a caravan site, yeah, and that is where I dined, yeah, with the surviving relatives of this lot in that place. That is Kinghorn, on the northern side of the Firth of Forth, yeah, and all of it is the massive. So the actual Alexander the Third, his birthplace was in Roxburgh Castle, just up the road, which is 5 miles away. Yeah, and that is King Alexander, and he died in the accident off his horse when he fell, and the following morning they discovered the corpse with the broken neck. Yeah, I can't remember how they explain the death of Margaret, but she died suddenly, and all of a sudden there's nobody left in the arrangement but the new King of England to be, that is Edward II, yeah, with the gay traits. Edward I intervenes. Following Alexander III's death, the Guardians of Scotland took control, but it was evident to England's King, Edward I, that conflict was brewing within the House of Baliol and, wait for it, the House of Bruce. That's why my mate Bruce was deathly quiet with all the drunkards around him last night. Yeah, being the main contenders for the Scottish throne, Edward began to take a greater interest in Scotland after the death of Alexander III in the Horsey accident. Remember that is what killed William of Orange too, tripped on a molehill, and all of it caused the death within weeks or days of those tyrannical religious warriors that impose the religious hatred so that they can divide and conquer the people. Alexander III and proposed the union through marriage between his son Edward, age 6, yeah, do you get it? And Alexander's granddaughter Margaret, age 7, known as the Maid of Norway. Guardians of Scotland: William Fraser, Bishop of St Andrews; Robert Wishart, Bishop of Glasgow; John Comyn, Lord of Badenoch. Those are the people that were killed by Robert the Bruce for the throne. James Stewart, 5th High Steward of Scotland; Alexander Comyn this time, Earl of Buchan; Don Chaldy III, Earl of Fife, and the mastermind behind the end result. Treaty of Birgham, 18th July 1290. Between Edward I and Guardians of Scotland proposed a marriage between Margaret, granddaughter of Alexander III, and Edward Carnarvon, later Edward II. So that is the importance of this treaty, cannot be overstated. It would have brought continuing and guaranteed independence to Scotland and a lasting peaceful relationship with England. Alexander had 2 sons and a daughter, but by 1284 his 3 children had all died, leaving his granddaughter as the only legitimate heir. In the treaty, it was proposed that Scotland was to remain separate and divided from England according to its rightful boundaries, free in itself without subjection. That is the opposing churches, yeah, that is the opposing schools, and your right to go to school if you're not in the right religion. Thus, against common law, Margaret, once crowned as Queen of Scots, would not have to hand over control of Scotland to her future husband Edward. This treaty was ratified on the 28th of August 1290 in Northampton, where Robin Hood used to roam around. Yeah, and all of it is the mythology that we can ever be free of the parasitic kings and queens. Once the treaty had been ratified at Northampton, arrangements were made with her father King Eric II of Norway to transfer Margaret by ship from Norway to Scotland. Unfortunately, she became sick during bad weather and subsequently died at St Margaret Hope Bay in South Ronaldsay. Her body was returned to Birgham for burial alongside her mother. A stained glass window of her image can still be seen in Lerwick Town Hall. That is where I went for my honeymoon with the Vash from Chipping Norton when she was still on my side, and that is the one that may have been murdered by Rothschild, who trained her as an agent. Only time and conscience will tell. The battle for Scotland on 10th May 1291 at a meeting at Norham with the guardians of Scotland, King Edward I declared himself to be superior and Lord Paramount of the Kingdom of Scotland. After some dissension, John Baliol was crowned in November 1292. That is the founder of Oxford University that has been immune from bombing since they started World War I. Yeah, it was immune from bombing like Heidelberg, Göttingen and Cambridge in World War I and World War II also. His first act was to release Edward from all promises made to the people of Scotland, including the safeguarding treasury Treaty of Birgham. Scotland was now a vassal state. Despite this, the Scots used the emerging conflict between England and France to move against English domination. From 1296 there followed what became known as the Scottish Wars of Independence, which saw the rise of William Wallace and Robert the Bruce, the death of Edward I, and finally culminated in the Scots' victory at the Battle of Bannockburn on 24th of June 1314. Remember in the movie that Robert the Bruce actually fought with his helmet on for the English king, and then fought a duel with Robert the Bruce, with Braveheart, and that is when Braveheart was able to fool him that he had been injured by the lance, and when Bruce came to see if he was dead, the Braveheart immediately stripped his helmet off, and it was Robert the Bruce that is the traitor fighting for Edward the Longshanks. Yeah, that's the Bruces that still rule the geopolitical roost right on the border in Coldstream, and all of the agents for Rothschild are there slumming it up, and all of the people that are in the massive Rothschild Game of Thrones mafia operation are still there. That's Harry Enfield, his brothers and sisters, and all of the people that are actually border Scots or border Englishmen that actually made the comedies with Harry Enfield in the 80s and the 90s. And it's absolutely disgusting. That is them absolutely gloating that they are like the Warner brothers. They are now the chief master masons, they are the secret societies, and even the folk that I used to play bowls with are now TV celebrities, and their name is Whitehouse in Harry Enfield's cast. Yeah, and they've come to meet me in front of the police station this week just in case I did not remember their name. That is Harry Enfield, that is Cholmondeley Warner of Germany, which is why Harry Enfield descends directly from Henry VIII. Yeah, that's Scottish Wars of Independence, which saw the rise of William Wallace and Robert the Bruce, the death of Edward I, and finally culminated. That's on Sands, on the Solway Firth, and that is the sun god's revenge against the serial killers that launched as an obligation false Christianity and killed every pagan in all of the conquered nations all across Europe, the Americas, the Latin Americas, and Antarctica, and the polar regions that are Canada and Russia. Battle of Bannockburn, and I think we can stop. This memorial was produced by the residents of Birgham with funding provided by Hudson Herschel and the Douglas and Angus estates. Scan opposite for more information. So that is the Douglases that used to fight the black and the red Douglases. They were the local people and should have been the local heroes, but because all of it is mercenary and bloody, none of them come out with a decent reputation. So I think we'll stop there. Yeah, that is Mammy Bruce's warring sign. Last night he did not make it because he knows by reading the future that today I'm going to let this out. Yeah? And can you see how the gods and the oak trees still resonate when the horrid history of the execution under those oak trees is detailed and given in a rational way. A very clever man, yet died in his bed listening to Braveheart screaming. He actually died in the Solway Firth, which is for me confirmation that the sun god Sol Natalis Invictus was looking down on him when he was ending his life. That is what the gods are capable of doing. They've now been replaced by the dogs and everything that is Harry Enfield's mentality, and his sisters and all of their bastard children, and all of the actresses are in the same region as all of the massacres. They think it's really funny until they contract the arthritis or the pathologies that the gods are capable of imposing on them. Yeah, and there are the tiny children that are the jailbait. Yeah, and the would-be husband, I don't think there is a picture of him. Okay, so there is Birgham High Street, and there is Eccles. Everywhere you go there are cover-ups. That's the Goon Show and Eccleston for the Grosvenor family that have their mansion in Eccleston. That is for the carve-up by the Orangemen in the Orange Revolution, which is why William in that revolution died when he fell off his horse. Often happens even to women in the story. Yeah, especially if they are friends of Rothschilds and the profiteers that are the bane of the warmongering world. So that they told me in the pub where I've just had dinner that it used to be called the Treaty of Birgham, but it's now back to, I can't remember what it is, but we'll soon find out. So there's Flanagan and the families that were at one time one of the earliest owners of Scone Palace that you've just learned about in all of the regal and royal decisions, and even religious decisions. That is Scone Palace, just on the outskirts of Perth, where I used to go to the rate meetings, and Flanagan was one of the earliest incumbents in that house. Sorry, I thought I might have missed the pub, but I don't think so. Here it is. That one is a Hinnigan. That is the earliest papal bloodlines. He's from my hometown, and they used to be my favourite families. They now know from my videos that they are the earliest papal families. That's Hinnigan, yeah, and the first 9 or 10 papal names. Al Pacino, do you get it? Flanagan of Scone Palace and Yetton, just up the road. So here's the Fisherman's Arms that was actually called the Treaty of Birgham. It's now the Fisherman's Arms of Birgham. I think we'll turn off and save the batteries. The meals are lovely and the people are aware of the stories, and it could make them a fortune. And it's just been opened again because of the coronavirus scam, and all of it is a massive piss take against the citizens of the world, like Harry Enfield's comedies. Yeah, they should be strung up. That is the warmongering and all of the copywriting of everybody's genuine geopolitical motives. That is Cholmondeley Warner and the secret society that is the Masons, using the 4 Warner brothers as propagandists right through World War I and World War II, out of Hollywood and every movie that is made. Yeah, and that is the Betty Grable, Gelly Rabal, Hitler's lovers, piss takes right through that period. Signing off. And there's the cemetery, and there's hardly anybody in it. Yeah, compared to the war graves all over Europe and every other continent. Saul Wayfirth.